I was halfway through my morning coffee when I saw the bulldozer. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a utility company doing some maintenance. But then I noticed the construction crew. And the massive banner that read, "Future site of Crestwood Luxury Golf and Spa." My coffee slipped from my hand, splattering all over my porch. My land. They were breaking ground on my land. But that didn't make any sense. I didn't own any vacant land. I stormed across my yard, my slippers slapping against the pavement, and grabbed the nearest construction worker. "Hey! What the hell are you doing?" The man barely glanced at me, too busy directing a backhoe that was already tearing into the ground. "Clearing the lot. We're on a tight schedule, buddy." Buddy? I wasn't his buddy. I was the guy who was about to have an aneurysm. "This is my property. You can't just—" "Sir, we bought this land fair and square." I spun around and saw a man in a designer suit, completely out of place on a dusty construction site. He was tall, tanned, and had the smug smile of someone who had never lost a negotiation in his life. "Richard Prescott, CEO of Crestwood Developers. Pleasure to meet you." He extended a hand, but I ignored it. "There's no way you bought my land. I never sold it." He sighed like he had been through this 100 times before. "Oh, I don't know about that." He pulled out a folder, flipping through paperwork with the ease of a magician performing a trick. "Property number 786B, purchased through the Homeowners Association as part of a rezoning effort. Your name was listed as the previous owner." I grabbed the documents, scanning them in disbelief. My name was there. My signature. A property I had supposedly neglected for years. The problem? I had never even heard of this property before. By the time I reached the HOA office, my blood pressure had hit dangerous levels. The meeting room was filled with smug board members and stale coffee, the kind of place where decisions were made without any concern for the people affected. Marcy Dunning, the HOA president, sat at the head of the table, wearing a smile that made my skin crawl. "Jack, what a surprise. Here to pay your overdue fines." I slammed the paperwork onto the table. "You sold my land without my permission." She barely flinched. "Correction, we sold land registered in your name. Due to unpaid fees, it was considered abandoned. I don't own any land besides my house." Marcy leaned back, crossing her arms. "That's not what our records show. You were notified months ago." I laughed, but it wasn't out of amusement. "You mean the pile of HOA junk mail I toss into the recycling? The ones about grass height violations and holiday decoration restrictions?" One of the board members snorted. Marcy shot him a glare before turning back to me. "The point is, the sale was legal." I felt my pulse in my temples. "So you're telling me you auctioned off a plot of land I never knew I owned, and now a billionaire is turning it into a golf course?" "Essentially, yes. And that doesn't sound insane to you?" Marcy checked her nails, completely unfazed. "The matter is closed, Jack." The hell it was. I stormed out, but not before knocking over a stack of useless HOA newsletters on my way. If these idiots weren't going to help, I'd figure this out myself. My next stop was the county records office, a place that smelled of old paper and regret. After 2 hours of waiting behind people arguing about permits and property taxes, I finally reached the desk of a bored-looking clerk who seemed deeply offended by my existence. "I need property records for a lot that was recently sold." She didn't even glance up. "Address." I rattled off the details, expecting more bureaucratic nonsense. Instead, she froze. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, eyes flicking between the screen and me like I had just given her nuclear launch codes. Sir, I think there's a mistake." "No kidding," I muttered. "What now?" She turned the screen toward me. The land wasn't registered under my name. Or anyone's name. It was federal property. I blinked. "What?" She hesitated. I need to get my supervisor." Minutes later, a man in a stiff suit appeared, looking like he had just bitten into a lemon. He motioned for me to follow him into a back office. Mr. Lawson, do you have any idea what this land was used for? I didn't even know it existed until this morning. The man exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. That lot is listed as a decommissioned military site. I laughed, because what else was I supposed to do? So let me get this straight. The HOA, in their infinite wisdom, sold government land to a developer. His expression didn't change. Yes. And they thought no one would notice? That appears to be the case. I shook my head, leaning back in the chair. Wow. So what now? You guys just take it back? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his phone, murmured something I couldn't hear, and within 5 minutes, federal agents walked through the door. My stomach dropped. Okay, hold on. I didn't do anything. The agent in charge, a woman with a face that could break stone, ignored me completely. Where is the developer? I raised my hands. I don't know. Probably breaking ground as we speak. She turned to her team. We need to shut it down. Now. I tried to process what was happening. My HOA had just pulled off one of the dumbest real estate deals in history. They had sold land they didn't own to a billionaire developer, and now the federal government was involved. And somehow I was stuck in the middle of it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of tires crunching against my driveway. When I peeked outside, my stomach twisted into a knot. A convoy of black SUVs had lined up in front of my house like something out of a spy movie. The neighbors were already peeking through their curtains, probably thinking I was some kind of criminal. I barely had time to grab my robe before a firm knock rattled my door. Standing on my porch was a woman in a dark suit, flanked by 2 men who looked like they hadn't smiled in years. She didn't introduce herself right away, just held up a badge and gave me a look that suggested she had no patience for nonsense. Jack Lawson. I swallowed hard. Depends. Am I in trouble? Her expression didn't change. Agent Samantha Keller. Federal Investigations Unit. We need to talk. I stepped aside, motioning them in. As they filed into my living room, I realized how unprepared I was for something like this. My coffee table was covered in old magazines, and my couch had a permanent dent from years of binge-watching TV. Not exactly the kind of setting that made me look credible. Agent Keller sat down, folding her hands neatly on her lap. We have a situation. No kidding, I said. Look, I didn't know the land belonged to the government. The HOA made a mistake. A really, really stupid mistake. She didn't blink. Mr. Lawson, do you have any idea what was on that land? I hesitated. The guy at the records office said it was some kind of old military site. That's all I know. Keller exchanged a glance with one of her agents before focusing back on me. That property was designated as a classified decommissioned facility. No public records exist beyond what's in outdated county files. I raised an eyebrow. Classified? So what are we talking about here? A secret bunker? A weapons storage site? Aliens. The agent next to her cleared his throat like he wanted to throw me out of my own house. Keller remained stone-faced. We can't disclose those details. Of course they couldn't. Typical government secrecy. But if they were this concerned, it meant things were worse than I thought. Keller leaned forward slightly. The sale of that land was not just illegal, it created a national security risk. If construction continues, there could be consequences. That got my attention. Consequences? You mean like the kind that involve explosions? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I rubbed my face. Okay. So what now? Do you guys just seize the land and kick everyone out? That's what we're working on, she said. But Crestwood Developers is challenging the legality of our claim. Their attorneys are arguing that since the land was sold in a public auction, they have a right to it. I laughed in disbelief. Wait. So you're telling me a real estate company is trying to outlawyer the federal government? It's more complicated than that, she admitted. We can stop them, but legal procedures take time. Meanwhile, construction has already started. I stood up, pacing the room. So while you're filling out paperwork, they're out there digging up whatever's buried under that land. That doesn't sound like a great plan. Keller's jaw tightened. Which is why we need you to help us prove the sale was fraudulent. I stopped pacing. Me? What can I do? I'm just the idiot who got dragged into this mess. You have direct involvement, she said. You were listed as the owner. If we can show that the HOA knowingly sold land they had no right to, it strengthens our case. I exhaled sharply. You mean you want me to take down the HOA? Keller nodded. We need proof of their negligence. If they falsified documents, pushed the sale through despite irregularities, or ignored due process, we can shut this down immediately. Taking down the HOA was a tempting thought. I had spent years dealing with their ridiculous rules, their constant fines for things like mismatched mailbox colors and unauthorized garden gnomes. The idea of turning the tables was almost poetic. All right, I said. I'll help. That afternoon, I found myself back in the HOA office, this time with a new plan. Instead of barging in like last time, I played it cool, pretending I just wanted to clear up some confusion about the sale. Marcy Dunning, ever the queen of smugness, gave me a condescending smile. Jack back so soon? I forced a chuckle. Yeah, just trying to understand how this all happened. It's not every day you find out you own land you've never seen before. She leaned back, twirling a pen between her fingers. Well, these things happen. That's why we follow protocol. Everything was done by the book. Right, I said. Just out of curiosity, when did the HOA acquire the right to sell that land? She hesitated for half a second, just long enough for me to catch it. It was classified as abandoned property after years of unpaid dues. That gave us the authority to put it up for sale. Got it, I said. And you're sure that's legal? Because I heard something interesting today. Something about how the land actually belonged to the federal government. Marcy's smile faltered. Just a flicker, but it was enough. That's absurd, she scoffed. We wouldn't sell anything without verifying ownership first. Oh good. So you wouldn't mind showing me those verification documents? The room went silent. A few of the other board members shifted in their seat. Marcy's fingers tightened around her pen. Well, she said finally, those records aren't exactly public. I smiled. See, that's the thing. If everything was done by the book, there shouldn't be a problem. Unless, of course, there's something you don't want people to see. Her jaw clenched. Jack, this conversation is over. I stood up. Sure. But you might want to know that the federal government is already involved. And if they find out you knowingly sold restricted land, well, I'm guessing the consequences won't be limited to a few angry homeowners. Marcy paled. I walked out feeling better than I had in days. The HOA was rattled. Now I just needed to get the proof to take them down for good. Unfortunately, Richard Prescott wasn't going to make it that easy. By the time I got home, a letter was waiting for me. It was from Crestwood Developers. A cease and desist notice. Prescott wasn't just fighting the government. He was coming after me too. The moment I saw the thick envelope with the Crestwood Developers logo, I knew this was going to get worse before it got better. I ripped it open, my heart hammering against my ribs. As expected, it was a cease and desist letter. Prescott's legal team was threatening to sue me for defamation and interfering with a lawful business transaction. Lawful. That was rich. I tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter and exhaled. Prescott wasn't just fighting the government. He was coming after me personally. That meant one thing: he was scared. Or at least, uncomfortable enough to want me silenced. That gave me an edge. I didn't need to beat him in court. I just needed to make this fight messy enough that he wouldn't want to risk it. But I had bigger things to worry about. Agent Keller had made it clear that time wasn't on our side. Crestwood Developers had already started construction. If they got too far, reversing the damage might be impossible. And then there was the real problem: what exactly was buried beneath that land? I spent the next few hours digging through old county records, cross-referencing military reports I probably wasn't supposed to have access to. The deeper I went, the more unsettling it became. The site wasn't just some forgotten storage facility. It had been an active Cold War base. And not just any base, it had been used for weapons testing. At some point, someone had deemed the site too sensitive to be sold off or repurposed, so instead of decommissioning it the normal way, they had simply erased it from most public record. But that didn't mean whatever was there had been properly disposed of. If Crestwood developers kept digging, they might uncover something the government had been trying to keep buried for decades. I called Agent Keller immediately. "We have to stop them," I said as soon as she picked up. She sighed. "You think I don't know that? Our legal teams are working on it, but Prescott's people are dragging this through every loophole they can find." "Forget the legal fight," I said. "If they keep digging, they might uncover something dangerous. We need to shut them down now." A long silence followed. "What did you find?" I hesitated. "Enough to know that if I were in your position, I wouldn't wait for a court ruling." Another pause. Then, "Send me everything you have." I forwarded everything I'd found. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Get out of your house," Keller said. "What?" "Now, Jack." She hung up. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. That's when I noticed the black sedan parked at the end of my street. I had seen it earlier but assumed it belonged to one of the neighbors. Now I wasn't so sure. As soon as I started walking toward my car, the sedan's engine roared to life. I didn't wait to find out if it was a coincidence. I jumped into my car, floored the gas, and tore out of my driveway. The sedan followed. I swerved onto the main road, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know who was chasing me, Prescott's people? Someone with a government badge? Someone else entirely? All I knew was that I wasn't planning on finding out the hard way. I took the sharpest turns I could, weaving through traffic, trying to lose them. But they were good. Too good. No matter what I did, they stayed on my tail. Then, up ahead, flashing blue and red lights appeared. A police checkpoint. Normally, I wouldn't have been happy to see cops, but today was different. I floored the gas, speeding straight toward them. The sedan behind me must have realized what was happening because they slammed the brakes, making a sharp U-turn and disappearing down a side street before the police even had a chance to react. One of the officers waved me down, motioning for me to pull over. I did, gripping the wheel tightly as he approached. "Sir, do you have any idea how fast you were going?" I exhaled shakily. "Honestly? No. But I was being followed." The officer frowned, glancing down the road where the sedan had vanished. "By who?" I shook my head. "That's what I was hoping you could help me figure out." He studied me for a long moment before finally gesturing for me to step out of the car. "Let's have a chat." An hour later, I was sitting in a federal office with Agent Keller, who looked even more stressed than before. "You just made things a lot more complicated," she said. I threw up my hands. "You're the one who told me to leave my house. I didn't realize that meant I'd be running for my life." She pinched the bridge of her nose. "I didn't think you'd be stupid enough to lead a chase straight to law enforcement." "Well, excuse me for trying to stay alive." She sighed. "Look, whoever was following you wasn't one of ours. Which means Prescott is getting desperate. He knows something is wrong with that land, and he's willing to go to extreme lengths to protect his investment." "That's an understatement," I muttered. She leaned forward. "We're moving in on the construction site tonight. If there's something dangerous there, we need to contain it before Prescott covers it up, or worse, before it gets out." "Gets out?" I repeated. "What exactly are we dealing with?" She didn't answer. That night, I stood at a distance, watching as federal agents swarmed the construction site. Prescott had clearly gotten wind of the raid because his workers were long gone. The site was eerily quiet, except for the steady hum of machinery left abandoned in the rush to leave. Then the digging began. I wasn't allowed near, but I could see the agents moving methodically, scanning the ground, checking records. Minutes turned into hours. And then, something happened. A section of the ground gave way, collapsing inward, revealing a dark cavern beneath. Agents immediately surrounded the hole, flashlights flickering as they peered inside. I held my breath, and then, as if someone had flipped a switch, the entire operation shut down. The lead agent barked orders. People moved faster. Vehicles were repositioned. The atmosphere changed from methodical to urgent. Whatever they had found, it was serious. Agent Keller returned to where I was waiting, her face unreadable. "It's done," she said. I narrowed my eyes. "That's it?" "Just like that." She nodded. "The site is under federal lockdown. Prescott's claim is nullified. The HOA will face legal repercussions for fraud. It's over." I didn't buy it. "And what exactly did you find?" She hesitated. "That's classified." Of course it was. A week later, the land was sealed off permanently. Prescott quietly pulled out of the project, cutting his losses. Marcy Dunning resigned from the HOA, citing personal reasons. The lawsuit against me mysteriously disappeared. Life went back to normal. Almost. One night, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It simply read, "Some things are better left buried." I stared at it for a long time before finally tossing it into the fire. I didn't need to know what was down there. I just needed to know that I had gotten out before it was too late.